Coming up today, labour market reforms and a multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget bill dominate talks between officials from the presidential office, government and ruling party. Lawmakers fail to make much headway on the details of a probe into the hacking scandal engulfing Korea's spy agency. They also remain far apart on the supplementary budget. Plus, a Japanese company apologizes for using captured soldiers as slave laborers during World War II, but claims a legal case means it can't say sorry to the Korean victims. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, July 23rd here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to our early morning edition of Arirang News. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye's closest aides, top government officials and the leaders of the ruling Syriza party held a three-way policy meeting on Wednesday, and after a turbulent few weeks, the presidential office and the ruling party agreed that they share the same goals and will pull in the same direction from now. Our Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
During Wednesday's policy consultation meeting, seeking parliamentary approval for a $10 billion supplementary budget and reforming Korea's rigid labor market were at the top of the agenda. At the start of the meeting, Presidential Chief of Staff Lee Byung-gi asked the ruling headway party for its full support to assure the success of President Park's administration.
The government cannot succeed without the support from the ruling party. The party's future also depends on the success of the incumbent government.
Party's chairman Kim Moo-sung and floor leader Won Yu-chul acknowledged that the three entities were on the same boat when it comes to improving the livelihoods of the people.
Our party, the government, and the presidential office must unite as one to practice politics that serves the interests of the people.
Floor leader Won said he would do his best to seek cooperation with the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy in order to pass the extra budget bill by Friday. However, the MPAD is calling for a drastic cut to the supplementary budget and is urging the government to raise the corporate tax rate to reduce the fiscal deficit. In regards to reforming the domestic labor market, the ruling party agreed to launch a special labor reform committee internally, headed by Lee In-jae, the party's Supreme Council member, to assess President Park's determination to overhaul the labor market in the second half of the year. President Park recently showed her willingness to revamp the discrepancies between wages paid to regular and non-regular workers, a source to the deepening labor market polarization in Korea. The participants also agreed to push for reforming the finance, public and education fronts by launching special reform committees for each sector. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
And staying with domestic politics, Korea's main rival parties held a number of discussions on Wednesday on the growing spy agency hacking scandal and the extra budget bill, but failed to narrow their differences. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy proposed a parliamentary hearing on the hacking allegations against the National Intelligence Service, but the ruling Syriza party opposes the move and is instead calling for conducting an on-site inspection first. In regards to the supplementary budget bill, the two parties disagree on how to make up for this year's anticipated tax revenue shortfall. They remain at loggerheads over the deadline as well. The ruling party wants the extra budget passed before the end of the July session on Friday. The MPAD, however, says it never agreed to hold a plenary session on that day. The floor leaders of the rival parties will meet again on this Thursday today in another attempt to reach a compromise on both these issues. Now, earlier this week, the Japanese firm Mitsubishi Materials apologized to American POWs for forcing them into hard labor during World War II. And now the firm's outside director has extended a similar apology to victims from European countries Australia, as well as China. However, Korea was not among them. On Wednesday, Yukio Okamoto told reporters that he wishes to offer the same kind of apology to wartime victims from the UK, the Netherlands and Australia. Okamoto said he sympathizes a great deal with forced laborers from China and added he wants to find a way to compensate them. However, as for the Korean victims, Mitsubishi is said to be taking a different approach due to what it says is an ongoing lawsuit on the matter. A senior and well-known Japanese politician has criticized Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the content of his upcoming statement to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. Japan's former Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono told the Asahi Shimbun that he can't understand what Abe is trying to achieve through the statement and sees no clear reason to make a new one. Kono said Japan instead needs to show through action what the country aims to do over the coming decades to improve ties with its neighbours. He added that the first step should be resolving the issue of the Yasukuni Shrine that honours several Class A war criminals and is regularly visited by high-profile political figures, including Shinzo Abe, as you can see there. Now, Kono is well known in Korea and across Asia for his historic apology in 1993 for Japan's sexual enslavement of women during the war. Staying in Japan, and a majority of Japanese say they don't want the country's post-war pacifist constitution to change. This is according to a new poll conducted by Kyodo News Agency. It showed that 60% of Japanese believe the constitution should not be altered. Only 32% said it should be changed. The figures indicate sentiment against changing the constitution may have grown amid Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's efforts to push through increasingly unpopular legislation to expand Japan's military role overseas. In addition, the poll found 52% of respondents think Japan is going in the wrong direction, more than the 46% rather, who believe it is heading in the right direction. Kyodo News implemented the mail-based poll from May to June to look into public opinion ahead of the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. Now, less than 1 year after Korea's first innovation centre opened in the southeastern city of Daegu, a network of 17 creative economy centres are now up and running, with the last centre opening in the western port city of Incheon on Wednesday. For more, here's our Song Ji-sun.
Innovation centres are at the core of President Park Geun-hye's drive for a creative economy. Since the first center opened in Daegu in September last year, 60 more have opened across the nation, completing a national network with the goal of helping local startups get off the ground. With the help of these centers, large companies based in the region provide startups with their know-hows. The centers also serve as a one-stop shop for everything the startups need, from legal advice to financing and patent applications. The country's last innovation center opened Wednesday in Incheon, with the goal of remaking the western port city into a smart logistics hub. 1/3 of Korea's trade volume passes through the city, and the new center aims to use its strategic location to facilitate exchanges between Korean and Chinese startups. With the center's launch, President Park Geun-hye's creative economy drive is now in full swing.
오늘 인천 혁신센터의 출범으로 작년 9월부터 시작이 된 전국 17개 창조경제혁신센터 구축이 모두 마무리되었습니다. 고유한 특색과 장점을 갖춘 전국 창조경제혁신센터들이 각 지역별 강점과 후원 기업의 역량을 결합해서 대한민국 창조경제를 선도해 나갈 수 있도록 이 자리에 계신 모든 분들이 힘과 지혜를 모아주시기를 바랍니다.
All 17 centers are aiming to keep pace with the changing startup landscape.
It's no longer about securing more funding. It's speed and the ability to adapt to the rapidly changing world that matters. The centers will manage regional resources and grow simultaneously, sometimes through competition and at other times through collaboration.
The Incheon Center is already collaborating with a private startup accelerator called Spark Lab, which now calls the port city home. The company aims to help local startups enter the global market and plans to host demonstrations at the center. the network has already racked up some achievements. Samsung and LG alone have shared over 90,000 patents with smaller companies, and more than 5,000 startups have received advice from the centers on launching their businesses. The task now is keeping the startup movement alive and keeping the center strong even after the end of President Park's term. 송지선, Arirang News.
The head of Korea's central bank says the impact of the MERS outbreak could drag down the country's GDP growth by 0.1 percentage point this year. At a meeting with economists on Wednesday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said the number of overseas tourists dropped by 53% in June from a year earlier, and he believes a rebound won't be easy in the crucial July to August summer vacation season. He encouraged Koreans to take their vacations within the country if possible, as that would help the domestic economy recover. Now, no new cases of MERS have been reported in 18 days now, and if this continues to be the case, Korea will officially declare an end to the outbreak in mid-August. The Korean government has laid out plans to tackle the country's household debt, which currently stands at a staggering $950 billion. The key point of the measures is that the government will make it easier for debtors to repay their loans. But for some, it might not be enough. Shin Se-min reports.
The Korean government and related authorities have unveiled a set of ambitious measures to help contain household debt while promising to maintain policies that will bolster economic growth.
While bank loans have helped spur the housing market, the new measures will ensure household debt does not drag down the economy.
The measures involve tightening the screening process for borrowers and stepping up monitoring of second-tier banks that are subject to looser financial regulations. The Financial Services Commission also said it would restructure loans to encourage borrowers to pay back the principal and the interest rather than just the interest, and drop the ratio of amortized loans to 45% of total bank lending by the end of 2017. Korea's overwhelming borrowing spree has been triggered by eased regulations on loans for real estate and the country's record low interest rate. But experts say the high debt levels do not yet represent an imminent threat.
The top 40% in terms of income takes up nearly 3/4 of the total liabilities in household debt, meaning they're more likely to be able to repay their debt. In other words, it's not a serious issue.
But the bigger problem lies with borrowers in the lower income brackets. The new debt measures fail to address those that have already taken out loans and are struggling to make ends meet, an issue that needs to be addressed with an eye to the long term.
Labor market reforms must accompany the household debt measures, because improving people's ability to repay their debt can only be done by raising wages.
Experts say that while the new debt plans are a step in the right direction, it's necessary to strengthen the lending and repayment system to ensure it is less vulnerable to risks from home and abroad, including the possibility of a rate hike in the U.S. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Donald Trump, the flamboyant U.S. billionaire and Republican presidential hopeful, has criticized South Korea for relying on the United States for defense when it has plenty of money of its own. Giving a campaign speech in South Carolina this week, Trump strongly insinuated that South Korea was enjoying a free ride based on security on U.S. taxpayers' money while giving nothing in return. While it was little more than a passing remark and Saudi Arabia bore the brunt of his criticism, it isn't the first time Trump has criticized South Korea. In 2011, ahead of the 2012 presidential election, he said the U.S. is protecting South Korea, but, quote, they don't pay us, end quote. Around 28,500 U.S. troops are stationed here in South Korea, and despite what Trump says, Seoul has long shared the cost of stationing U.S. forces on the peninsula, paying close to $900 million for their upkeep last year alone. Now to the latest on the Greek debt crisis, and the country's embattled Prime Minister has vowed to keep his fractured Syriza party in line ahead of another key vote on a second set of reforms needed to secure its multi-billion euro bailout deal. Alexis Tsipras says rebel MPs within the party need to stop hiding behind him and his signature and represent the Greek people, who he says have pinned their hopes on staying in the Eurozone. If Parliament approves the financial and judicial reforms, then Athens will be able to open negotiations for an €86 billion bailout from its international creditors. The vote is expected to pass with the support of opposition parties. Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Do stay tuned for Business Daily. That's coming up at 8 a.m. Korea time. We'll be back with our next newscast at noon. Until then, goodbye.